How many wolves have been reintroduced?
So it's not been a large number, and I think the number is about 25. First set of wolves that were introduced actually came from areas where the wolves were known to conduct depredation. And what that means is they had learned to attack livestock, to attack cows and sheep and other animals as a way for them to survive. And that's because of this interface between the wolves and humans in those areas. And those are the wolves that came originally to the state of Colorado.
So we got them pre-trained to
and
kill
came
livestock.
here and went straight to that approach.
How much livestock has been damaged or killed?
It's over $600,000 worth of damage as far as direct reimbursement requests that have come from ranchers so far in Colorado. That's a pretty large number.
Why are we still arguing over wolf reintroduction? But first, subscribe and like our channel. Click that little bell icon for notifications. Find the Devil's Advocate podcast on your favorite listening app. Stan the Man VanderWerf, tell me, why do you hate the wolves?
Well, John, I don't hate wolves. That's really not the issue here. The issue is bad law, bad policy that's actually harming our ranching industry and our farming industry, and it's time to stop it.
You were bit by a dog as a kid. Was that what this is all about?
It's amazing your intuition you have. I was bit by a dog as a kid, but it has nothing to do with that at all.
All right. For those who don't know you, Stan, you've been a county commissioner for a long time down in El Paso County.
Mm-hmm.
You've worked with the Department of Defense. You've been in the military. The issue of wolf reintroduction has really changed. When did it pass? Because my sense is if it were on the ballot today, it would fail.
I think you're right, John. I really do. That actually passed in 2023. And in the fall of 2023, the law required the first introduction of wolves. So that
2023 it passed, not 2020?
2023.
Really? And
yeah. And then we went through all of 2024 with big, gigantic battles going on, between the advocates of wolf reintroduction and those that were opposing it. We've done that all of 2024.
Tell me a little bit about what these wolves really are. I've heard they're not actually the wolves that used to live in Colorado. It's a different strand of wolf.
That's correct. True? Yeah, that's right. So the wolf that's most native to Colorado is called a Mexican wolf, and they actually do reside in Colorado, but they're in the southern part of Colorado, and they're a smaller animal, and they're not inclined to pursue livestock. The gray wolf is the one being introduced.
Were there ever wolves in the northwestern part of Colorado?
So gray wolves are not originally native to Colorado, but they have come into Colorado from time to time, and they have lived here from time to time. But they're actually more accustomed to living in more remote locations. So when you get up into the northern United States states, you'll see more wolves. And there's an enormous number of them in Russia and Canada.
What I found fascinating about the vote to reintroduce them is that it was largely Boulder and Denver counties that decided this. So it was the Denver metro area that decided to put killer animals in someone else's backyard.
That's right.
It was really, for me, the punctuation mark on this war between the rural areas and the urban areas. This war that goes on where people in the suburbs are giving the middle finger to ranchers and farmers. And for me, I've never seen that. Growing up in Colorado, I've never seen the disrespect from the metro area to the outskirts. We used to love the people in the outskirts. We understood that's where our food came from. That's where our building supplies came from. With this vote, for me, that all changed.
I can tell you one of the sad outcomes of this law passing is us being pit against ourselves. Our rural neighbors and friends are mad at folks on the Front Range, and the Front Range, it's obvious the people on the Front Range don't really understand some of the challenges that our ranchers and our agriculture industries and hunting industries, what they have as far as challenges. And so now we have situations where ranchers were working with the Colorado Department of Wildlife, but the Department of Wildlife is the state organization that's forced to abide by this law, and they feel they have no choice. But it's producing this anguish and this
I never thought about
pain.
that because farmers or ranchers are some of the best conservationists and environmentalists I know.
That is right.
People think, oh no, they hunt, they must hate. No, hunters love wildlife and ranchers love the wildlife. And so working with the Department of Wildlife, there's always been a real collaborative thing all the time. That's changed. This polarization that we're seeing around the nation is happening in this state, and largely, in this issue, it's a perfect one. How many wolves have been reintroduced? I'm even using their language. How many ones have been introduced?
So it's not been a large number, and I think the number is about 25.
Okay.
And the harm that they've done already is really pretty severe.
What have they done?
So unfortunately, the first set of wolves that were introduced actually came from areas where the wolves were known to conduct depredation. And what that means is they had learned to attack livestock, to attack cows and sheep and other animals as a way for them to survive. And that's because of this interface between the wolves and humans in those areas. And those are the wolves that came originally to the state of Colorado.
So we got them pre-trained
to
and kill
came
livestock.
Here and went straight to that approach.
But I think if I were a wolf, I'd look at nice, big, juicy animals that are penned up and really can't run away and go, God, this is a buffet. This is a cruise line. I've made it. So I can't imagine why, even if they weren't trained to, they wouldn't find it and teach the pack how to kill. How much livestock has been damaged or killed?
It's over $600,000 worth of damage as far as direct reimbursement requests that have come from ranchers so far in Colorado. That's a pretty large number. But actually, just the depredation itself, which means killing a cow or other sheep or something, the damage is actually way past that. Because what happens is when you have wolves attack a herd, it scares the herd, and then the calving actually is reduced. So we have some herds in Colorado right now whose calving is reduced by 30%. Now we're talking about food for us. We're talking about increase in costs in the grocery store for us. And we're talking about not only harming the calves and the cows and harming the herds and the ranchers, we're actually talking about harming the wolves.
So
why are they even here?
Let's get back to that other part.
Yes.
I'm not a rancher. I love the product, but I would not know that a herd that is scared is somehow less fertile or not going to reproduce as much.
That's right.
Is this a pretty well-known thing, or is this?
It's commonly known amongst ranchers.
Really?
Right.
Is there any way to prove that? Because if a rancher loses one of its animals to a wolf, it can ask for some reimbursement from the state. How in the world do you say, well, my population is down because these cows won't get pregnant?
It's already proven. If you were to talk to the ranchers who have been impacted by wolf introduction, they will tell you their calving is down, and in some cases that's up to 30% reduction.
Does the state reimburse for that?
No, I don't think.
I wouldn't think so. How would you prove it?
I think the law that's part of the problem. The proof of depredation, the proof of harm, is a fairly high bar. If you have a cow that looks like it was eaten by an animal, you have to prove it was a wolf that ate it in order to get reimbursed. So
not a mountain lion.
Not a mountain lion.
Not your crazy Uncle Bob.
That's right. And the hunters are also harmed by this policy because what would happen is the Department of Wildlife would issue permits for different kinds of animals based on any kind of imbalance that was taking place. And the hunters would actually take care of that challenge by an issuance of permits. So we're not only harming our food production and our ranch industry, we're also harming our tourism industry with this.
Are the wolves bringing back some natural balance? The reason we have hunting is that we need to thin certain herds. And the Department of Wildlife is very good at saying, no, we're overpopulated here, we're underpopulated here, so we're not issuing any tags for this type of elk or that type of deer. But over there, we're overpopulated, so we are. Does the wolf now help do the job that wildlife department has to do because Mother Nature used to do it?
So to your point, that was part of the arguments that were made in the original citizen ballot measure, that the wolves would help produce more balance, maybe bring more plant life back into some of the ecosystems in our more remote areas in Colorado. But so far, there's no proof to that having happened. I don't think that was, in fact, a valid argument. I don't think it was a valid argument. I think it was incorrectly made.
I think about the idea that the herds of cattle are down because they're being terrorized by wolves. I imagine a lot of the proponents of this wolf introduction were like, that's just gravy to me because I don't want people eating meat. You know, this was one of those things that just had the fingerprints of Marlon Reese all over the governor's husband, who's just, off the wall animal rights activist. And this just has all those telltale signs of people who want to make eating meat discouraged. They want to make it illegal if possible. They won't say that, but they are activists.
To your point, there's absolutely a giant undercurrent of that particular issue going on in this law. And I find it ironic and interesting that the proponents of the original law tried to go to the state legislature and get sponsors for a bill to introduce wolves in Colorado, and they couldn't find a sponsor. They couldn't find a Republican sponsor. They couldn't find a Democrat sponsor. So they ended up strengthening their team, finding a lot of money to go forward, and they went through a ballot measure, and they got it petitioned on by getting enough signatures, and then they ran that ballot measure in 2023, and they were successful, although by less than 1 percentage point.
Where did the money come from for their campaign?
The vast majority of it is not known because of the way current law works. Those donations are predominantly private, but the speculation is most of the money came from outside the state of Colorado. These were people that came from outside Colorado and came with outside money and messed with us. So, and there was not a lot of support for this in the legislature.
I remember the video of the wolf introduction. Governor's there, his husband's there, they open the doors, the dogs come running out. Great visual. Nobody knew where it was going to happen. They still don't know where it's going to happen. And a lot of the folks, including county commissioners and municipal elected officials and law enforcement, were like, wait a minute, you didn't tell us when and where you were going to do this? Why aren't they telling us when and where they're releasing these wolves?
Yeah, there are actually provisions in the current law that basically require the state to collaborate with the ranchers and local agencies. And that includes pre-announcements about where these are going to be released so that the people that live in those areas can be prepared. But what has happened is this is so vehemently opposed on the Western Slope and in our ranching communities across Colorado that the state is actually concerned now about getting large protests and possibly having a challenging environment at the point of release of the wolves. And this is just speculation on my part, but I think this last round where they released 15 wolves that came from Canada, they did it, and then after the fact, they announced where they released those wolves. I do believe that's a violation of the current law. But they felt, I think, and this is, again, speculation on my part, I think they felt they had to do that for everybody's safety involved.
Do all the wolves have trackers on them?
They do.
Each and every one?
As far as I know, that's correct.
Now, their offspring are not going to have that.
That's right.
But right now, we can see, is that public information? If I wanted to see where they're
Mhm.
where they're going?
I don't-
Can I pull it up on a screen and go?
It's a
He's right
good
there.
question. I don't know if there's a public website, but I do know that the Department of Wildlife does release where these wolves are tracking, and they have tracked through an enormous amount of northern Colorado. They're in Eagle County now, where Vail is, just north of there, and that's not where they were introduced. That's a long distance away.
You know, I've seen those. It's after the fact map, and it shows
That's
the
right.
areas where they're
They're
and
really
it's
spreading.
a huge amount.
That's right.
These wolves, they like to travel. You know, one of the most vicious videos I've ever seen was door cam footage of a wolf eating a pet. I mean, it just ripped this little dog apart. It was from a different country, but it was like this is what you're getting. I wonder if these
apex
wolves
predators.
I wonder if these wolves were introduced in Boulder and we lost a few of our family friends' dogs, what the vote would be.
Well, maybe it would be a little bit different. They are apex predators.
What does that mean, apex predator?
Top of the food chain. There's really not a predator to manage wolf population. So they're at the top of the food chain, and they are very intentional. They're very smart. They work together, and they're good at hunting, and they're good at killing. And unfortunately, some of them kill for sport, not necessarily for eating.
Really?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's pretty badass, I got to tell you.
Yeah.
As long as it's not me they're eating.
You know, on the one side, the issue here is really the mix of these apex predators with humans, right? On the other side, these wolves are amazing creatures. They're really something. They're something to be revered, quite honestly. The problem is they need to be in their own space. That's very, very important. There's over 60,000 of them in Canada, and there's about 250,000 of them living naturally in very remote areas around the country, in Asia, in Siberia, in the northern tiers of different countries. And you know, they're listed as an endangered species by the EPA, but there's 250,000 of them.
Other states have reintroduced them. How did that go?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I can tell you that whenever you artificially introduce these wolves into places where you have a lot of human activity going on, the outcome's never good.
I found it fascinating that when there was the Denver city vote on closing down this meat packing facility that processed lamb, it got killed. There was a fur ban in Denver. It got killed. The very same people that said, let's put wolves over there, said, no, this has gone too far. I am convinced that people have buyer's remorse over this initiative.
Yep.
That they look at this and they're like, we weren't thinking that it was going to destroy farmers the way it is. We didn't think it was going to kill animals. We didn't think it was going to kill puppies. We didn't think it was going to cost this much. We didn't know that there was already millions of them around the world anyway, and that if they worked their way down here naturally, that's one thing, but to let them loose, it would not pass. The legislature could reverse this. This is not a constitutional amendment.
That's correct.
This was a statutory amendment. The legislature could change this today.
And in fact, one of the other challenges, forget just for the moment about the harm this is doing to our ranching industry. It's costing us as taxpayers millions of dollars to implement this law.
Yes.
At a time when, you recall the newspaper articles, we have a $672 million shortfall in budget that has to be found.
But we have to pay the ranchers for their cattle that have been mutilated.
That's right. And there'll be more and more of that. And there's a cost associated with the introduction of the wolves as well. We might get the wolves for free, but you devote labor hours in getting them to be released.
And tracking them and following
all of the
up,
tracking and so forth. And you know that Senator Kirkmeyer has publicly stated that maybe we need to put a delay into the introduction of wolves. They know there's a law there, so you ultimately until something is changed about that law, the state does have an obligation to try to do its best to comply with the law, but they have to find over $600 million worth of savings in order to get to a balanced budget, which is a constitutional requirement in Colorado. So this is one of those that's being discussed. And also, you might know that several of our federal delegation, Lauren Boebert, Congressman Hurd, Congressman Crank, and others are contemplating introducing legislation to get this wolf delisted off of the EPA endangered species list.
Would that change our law at all?
Well, what I find kind of interesting is, if you will, it's kind of a trifecta and a whole bunch of people beginning to realize that this law was a gigantic, monstrous mistake. The fact that at the federal level, it looks like there may be action that will be attempted at the state legislature level about delaying introduction of wolves because they need the funds to balance the books. And the fact that we're harming the ranchers, and the ballot measure that we're introducing to actually stop the introduction of wolves is very, very interesting. There was no coordination between these three efforts, but you can see there's a groundswell of activity across a broad spectrum about doing this a little bit better than what we have today.
All right, so tell me about this effort. In Colorado, we have the right to change the law.
That's
We're
right.
Citizens. It's an initiative process. And there's talk of trying to undo this. You're involved with it.
That's right.
What is it you want?
We went to the ranchers and we went to a bunch of stakeholders to find out, what is the best approach. And that they appealed to the Department of Wildlife to stop the introduction of wolves, but the Department of Wildlife can't do that for them because the law is on the books. And they have an obligation to abide by that law, despite the controversy that it's creating. So really the only way to end this is to do something to change that law. So that's what we want to do. And we intend on doing that with a citizen ballot initiative. And our intention here is really simple. There's a lot of provisions in that law that passed that the ranchers happen to like. These are provisions that strengthen the obligations of the state government to reimburse the ranchers for depredation when they lose a cow. So those provisions they want to keep. What we want to do is not change those, but instead just stop wolf introduction. So the earliest we can get this on the ballot for a vote is November of 26. And if it's successful, we want the law to be implemented on December 9 of 2026. And then for wolf introduction to stop dead cold on 31 December of 2026. Now that's the fastest we can do it. It'd be great if we could do it in 25, but that's not possible. So just stop.
Do you want to get rid of the wolves that are here? We do have trackers on them. We can find them.
We do have trackers on them, and to pursue an approach like that would be much more problematic and probably would get would get more resistance. So
how do these wolves taste?
I have no idea. Yeah. I've never eaten wolf meat.
Well, it sounds like you got an opportunity.
Yeah.
Actually, to do that, there's a saying inside farming and ranching when it comes to certain invasive species and animals that do damage but you can't touch. And the phrase is shoot, shovel, and shut up, which is there's a predator, he might be on some list or he's out of season or whatever. You're out in the middle of nowhere. You shoot it, you bury it, you never tell anybody. It's a little harder when you have a tracker on the animal and the guy's trying to protect his livestock. So what's the law here? If I was seeing one of my cattle being attacked, can I shoot the animal? If I do, am I going to be punished? Is it going to cost me? Or do I just sit there and watch my prized cattle that's worth hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, some of these cattle that are for breeding?
That's right.
And watch it just get mutilated.
Well, part of the problem is because it's on the endangered species list, that makes it a violation of law to kill the animal. So delisting it on the endangered species list becomes a key component of all of this.
So right now, even if I'm watching it and it's attacking my pet dog It's attacking my daughter. If I'm trying to shoot it, I'm committing a federal crime.
Yeah, technically, yes. Now, I think if, I'm not an expert at law in this particular case, but I think if a wolf were attacking a human, you would have every right to defend your family and that human. But if they're attacking your livelihood, that's a violation of law.
And it really
isn't this an interesting issue?
And the issue is takings, because what we've done, when we take somebody's property for public use, we have to compensate them. But when we say you can't use your property the way you're supposed to, well, that's kind of the same thing. We're taking away people's livelihoods. We're taking away their property rights. We're taking away their right to make a living. And now we're saying this animal can be on your property. It can destroy your way of living. It can destroy your livelihood. You still can't touch it. And after the damage is done, you have to prove to our satisfaction that it was a wolf.
That's right.
That it was this type of wolf that's covered by it. And then we'll give you some compensation. Now, that doesn't mean the compensation that you would have gotten for, let's say you have a prize bull, and for all the livestock that it's going to produce on its lifetime is gone. You're not getting paid those losses. You're not getting paid, as you said, for the losses of the change in the herd and the pregnancy rate going down. You don't get. You just get for that one cattle, not all the things that one cattle will do.
Right. And so if you do lose a cow, you get you can submit an application to be reimbursed for that. But as I've mentioned before, you have to prove it. Now, how do you compensate a rancher when 30% of the calving stops? And that is nearly impossible to prove that was caused because of the fear of an apex predator having killed another cow, and the herd saw that 3 days before.
And how do you prove the market value? What happens when these cattle are alive is they'll go to auction, and some prize beasts go for a lot of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And one day it could be this, or one day it's that. It's not a commodity that's just like, oh, that's this, that's $25. No, we don't know what its value is until it's brought to market.
That's right.
So this is just a very gray area. I can understand their utter hatred of this. Has anyone changed their mind in the policy world right now? I mean, for instance, the governor and his husband were there at the grand reintroduction. Do you get any sense that there's some regret there?
So I haven't had an opportunity to speak to the governor or his significant other, but I can tell you that amongst the people that I speak to, they have seen the newspaper articles. They see the anguish in the ranching industry, in the hunting industry, in the ag industry. They see this, and these are their friends. So I don't know necessarily if they voted for or against this, but I do think there is a lot of buyer's remorse, and it's very, very interesting. We only came out with this in the first week of January. We haven't even been at this an entire month yet. Just a few days shy of an entire month. We already have 600 volunteers registered who want to be petitioners to get this on the ballot. They're from all over the state. We have met with the ranching associations, the ag associations, the hunting associations. They're all in. They're all in support. They've been fighting this battle since the law was introduced, but we have an enormous groundswell coming at us in support of this approach about this ballot measure. And it just seems like it's a juggernaut, the beginning of a juggernaut that's coming. And I really think that if we go through the process, right, getting through legislative committee, we have a second legislative committee hearing tomorrow. Then from there we go to title board. And then we get we get signatures, and you need 125,000, so we're going to get 200,000 in order to make sure that we make that number. And then we get on the ballot and we go through a marketing campaign. All indications that we have are indicating to us that this is going to work.
Let's leave it at this, which is there's a positive here. Not just for repealing the law. But there's such a backlash. You remember when the governor gave us Meat Out Day?
Mhm.
This was again to please his husband. And the reaction was, no, we're all going out for steaks tonight.
Yeah.
It was one of the best advertising campaigns. And Jared tried to turn it into, well, that's what I meant to do all along.
Yes,
It's like, oh,
I remember
dear,
that.
What bullshit. You did not mean to do it that way. But because of this ridiculous law, it is now harder to do other crazed animal rights things. The sheep bill here in Denver to close down the factory, the fur ban, those things would have passed easily in Denver, but they didn't. And in a way, I think there's a positive that has happened from these wolves, that people have now have a picture, a poster child of animal rights activism gone crazy.
That's right.
And because of that, it's going to stop a lot of future attacks.
I really think you're accurate in that assessment. We've had this experience. There have been other experiences that you just mentioned. We had the Meat Out proclamation, and I was a county commissioner in El Paso County at that time, and we did a Meat In proclamation on the exact same day. And on that day, that Governor Polis declared as a Meat Out Day, in El Paso County alone, we had over 100 barbecues, some of them with 400 or 500 people in the barbecues. And a lot of the small ranchers sold out.
Yeah.
That one day, the Meat Out Day, was the biggest seller of meat in Colorado history because of the reaction to it. So I would just give the governor and anybody else that has been supporters of these activities, leave Colorado alone.
There is
Just
a real
leave us
growing
alone.
sense of, hey,
Yeah.
you do you, I do me. You want to convince me not to eat meat? By all means.
Yeah.
Convince me. I'm willing to hear you out.
But don't ram that down our throats with a law.
When you coerce us by these ridiculous laws and regulations that have been going on to ranchers, no, this doesn't work.
That's
and
right.
I'm happy to buy and consume their product. Stan, people want to get more information. Is there a place where they can go?
Yes, there's a website we have, smartwolfpolicycolorado.com. On there, you can donate to the campaign. By the way, we've in 30 days, we've raised 5 figures in money. We'll need more. You can also volunteer on that if you'd like to be a petitioner or be involved in the campaign. So smartwolfpolicy.com, that's the place to go.
Do you have any big donors behind this? Some cattle associations or some meat packing facilities or meat industries?
Yes, those are in the works and under negotiation today, and I do believe that they're coming. We don't have them at this particular moment in time. The money we've raised so far have been small donors and citizens. But we think we're going to end up with some big.
What is your confidence of this passing if it gets on the ballot for 2025?
90%.
That high? Why do you say that?
The groundswell and support, the anguish that people have, the frustration of the ranchers, the frustration of the hunting and the ag industries, they're frustrated. And I got to tell you, and you'll appreciate this, they feel like they're not being listened to by the state legislature and by the governor.
You know why they feel that way?
Because
they're not being listened to.
That's right.
Stan the man, keep up that great job, man. It's an important thing, and I think you're going to be successful.
Thank you very much.
If you enjoyed that conversation, by all means, click one of these other great programs. We have the best conversations with the most fascinating Coloradans. And subscribe to our channel. Just click down below and hit that little bell button too. You don't want to miss a single show.